It is a new era in the Seattle Seahawks organization. Geno Smith traded to the Las Vegas Raiders. DK Metcalf traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers late on a Sunday night. Metcalf now makes his way to the Steel City. In return, a second-round pick heads back to the Northwest. The teams also swap a 6th and 7th rounder this upcoming draft as well. But DK Metcalf, now a Pittsburgh Steeler. On the opposite side of the field from George Pickens, you have two elite deep threats in the NFL, and yet no quarterback in-house currently to throw them the football. But the blockbuster deal, DK Metcalf now makes his way to the Steel City. And of course, DRS, he made his way to the Steel City with 1 year remaining in his current contract, so an extension had to be signed. A 5-year, $150 million deal with Pittsburgh. DK Metcalf becoming the 7th wide receiver around the NFL to reach that $30 million annual benchmark.
This is an interesting one because, number one, you understand this. DK Metcalf wanted to make as much money as he can. A lot of teams out there, Ben, would have offered him a lot of money to play for them. And sometimes you want to focus on getting the exact right spot. And usually the way wide receivers work is, all right, number one, I want my money. Number two, I want my catches. Number three, who's my quarterback going to be to get number two, which is my catches? So, hey, let me go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, a team notorious for not letting your quarterback spin out there and running the football at all costs and playing in lower scoring games in a black and blue division, which DK Metcalf goes, perfect scenario. Love it. I got another superstar on the other side, or budding superstar, hopefully in Pickens, if he can keep his head on straight. But also, I don't even have a quarterback right now. And the funny part about this is, yes, you want to secure that long-term money because that's what's most important. But you also want an accurate thrower. It's why you take a look at Cincinnati, and sometimes you can deal with T. Higgins, which we will in just a little bit, going, you know, it's so much fun. No matter what route I run, I turn around and the ball is right on my chest for an easy completion and catch. As a wide receiver, there is nothing more demoralizing than cooking your defender play by play and not getting the football because he can't get it to you or just doesn't read the defense and know that you're wide open. But DK to Pittsburgh makes a lot of sense if they can get a thrower of the football. Otherwise, why would you spend that much money at the wide receiver position and say, Arthur Smith, I don't want you to throw the football more than 22 times per game because that's Steeler football. I like the decision to add talent in DK Metcalf. I just don't know about the execution of this decision and who that quarterback is actually going to be, Ben.
Seattle gets a second-rounder back in return. They will have some more draft assets to utilize this year to start to rebuild that franchise as well. The story for the Steelers has been consistent success. 18 years under Mike Tomlin, never fewer than 8 victories, of course, never a losing season. But the idea of being a 10-win football team, getting absolutely blown out during Super Wild Card Weekend in the opening round of the playoffs, is starting to become a little bit old for a stable franchise in the Steelers, but a franchise that also was once known for winning Lombardi trophies and seems very, very far from doing so. The last time the Steelers played in a Super Bowl, 2012. The last time the Steelers even reached the AFC Championship game, 2016. And new information this morning from ESPN's Adam Schefter. The Steelers continue talking to Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, but Aaron Rodgers has emerged as a QB option in Pittsburgh per league sources. As I said at the open, I would rather have the promising Justin Fields, despite the idea that, of course, Aaron Rodgers is a much better thrower of the football in that offense with DK Metcalf and George Pickens than the 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers at this stage of his career. But it does seem as though the Steelers are looking at the same thing Donnie has said. If we have DK Metcalf and George Pickens, we need to make sure we can throw the football with consistency instead of designing, in my opinion, an offensive scheme that could be creative. So there is a chance that Aaron Rodgers, after 20 years in the NFL, spends maybe his final one or the final few in Pittsburgh.
And there's a couple layers to this story, right? You look at saying, okay, Justin Fields, why would you even want to come back to Pittsburgh? You were told last year, the minute you got acquired, hey, kid, good luck. You will never see this field unless our quarterback breaks his leg, and then I'll bring in another quarterback, and if his leg breaks, maybe you'll get into the football game. So to come back here and be a starter is interesting from his level. But number two on this, if you are getting the wide receivers to have an aerial assault downfield, you need a competitive passer. That's not Justin Fields. I actually would like Justin Fields more on the Steelers if they didn't get DK Metcalf and just said, you know what? We're actually going to trade Pickens away. We're going to run the football and play really good defense. They'd probably win 9 to 10 football games that have a winning record like Mike Tomlin does. It's an interesting maneuver. I need to see who's pulling the strings at the quarterback position, and that's a great debate until we find out who that is.
We'll continue the NFL offseason news next. So, an NFL weekend where we saw a bunch of moves and maneuvers. We just talked about the two trades Seattle made, sending Geno Smith to the Las Vegas Raiders and DK Metcalf to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Always an interesting move for Metcalf to go to a place where they don't have a quarterback at this moment. Cannot say that about Buffalo, New York, of course, as Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, gets rewarded with a big contract extension. 6-year, $330 million deal. That is $55 million per year AAV, annual average value, making him tied for the second highest paid QB in the NFL alongside Joe Burrow, Trevor Lawrence, Jordan Love, all four of those guys behind Dak Prescott. But the real story in the contract and the finances is $250 million fully guaranteed to Allen, the most guaranteed money ever in an NFL contract in league history.
If there's a guy that deserves it, you probably would say Josh Allen. But again, being physically responsible, sometimes you bring up some of the question marks because the AAV is what we like to look at, which typically on a contract is, you know what? The going rate for a quarterback now is in the mid-50s. And if that's what it's going to be for Josh Allen, that's great. But all contracts aren't built the same. And you're graded in the NFL with how much guaranteed money you're getting. And $250 million now surpasses Deshaun Watson. That's an incredible amount of money. And I just said he probably deserves it. But you never know the future in football. A couple of concussions, a couple of injuries here. The one thing with the NFL is say, okay, the quarterback just didn't work out in 2 years. He's going to retire. Let's just say he still had $205 million guaranteed on that contract. That hits the salary cap. You can't get out from under that. That's what the issue sometimes is. If we would have a contract, let's just say, Ben, $55 million on the average value per year of that, and maybe only $125 million guaranteed, then you say, wow, that's an absolute steal for the Buffalo Bills. But if Josh Allen plays well, he's going to eventually see all of that money. It's a lot of money to give when you, especially a few years ago, just gave him a new contract. I'm not hating on the deal because understand this. If you have a superstar player that you've identified that's going to be your franchise guy for at least the next 5 years, pay him now because in 2 to 3 years, you will look at that as a steal. So remember the deal that they had in Kansas City for Patrick Mahomes? What? $500 million. Are they out of their mind? What an absolute steal that turned out to be. Identify the players that are good, that will lead your franchise and pay them now. That's what the Buffalo Bills did. That's why I'm not hating on this deal. Great football player in 2 years. This contract probably going to be a steal.
So, DRS, you mentioned that big deal for Patrick Mahomes, who we all would say currently in the NFL is the best quarterback around the league. Josh Allen, our reigning MVP winner. Neither Mahomes nor Allen were paid with one of the top 10 biggest salaries last year in 2024, which is crazy to say because of when they signed their second deal after their rookie contracts in their NFL career. So Josh Allen now rewarded, but to Donnie's point, in 2 to 3 years again, Josh Allen still performing at this level, as we all anticipate. It seems like a steal. A lot of guaranteed money. And we use the AAV to conceptualize and compare for Josh Allen. I'm sure he's happy with $55 million per year on annual average value. He is happier with $250 million already in the bank account. All right, elsewhere around the NFL, a trade request early during Super Bowl week. Myles Garrett, the 2023 Defensive Player of the Year, one of the most feared defenders in all of the NFL, requested a trade out of Cleveland. I can't win here. This Browns team is in, once again, another rebuild. I want to contend for Super Bowls to finish out my career. And the Browns said, we're not so sure. And Myles Garrett said, if you don't trade me, I'm not paying or playing. I don't care how much money I miss. The Browns then said, how about $40 million per year? Myles Garrett said, what? All right, I'm back in Cleveland, man. Let's have a reunion. A $40 million per year extension 4-year, $160 million deal, $123.5 million, fully guaranteed. The highest paid non-quarterback ever in the history of the National Football League was once Justin Jefferson. Just a week ago, it was Max Crosby. And now it is Myles Garrett, sacrificing a chance to contend for a Super Bowl for $40 million per year.
Hey, one of the worst owners in professional sports, Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns, just bungle every single decision that they could possibly make. But let's get into it, because there's a couple layers to this. And the interesting part was, like, Myles Garrett saying, look, I made a lot of money already. I played for Cleveland. We are a horrible franchise with no quarterback and no direction. It's not about money. I just went out. I said, well, that's pretty admirable. Let's see where he can go. And then we see that the owner goes, you know what? My star player wants to meet with me. Maybe we can mend some fences here. I'm not going to meet with you at all. It harkens back to the Indianapolis Colts. You remember Jim Irsay was like, Jonathan Taylor wants a new contract. I don't care if he sits the rest of his career. I'm never paying that guy. And like 24 hours later, it's like, man, this guy's the best running back I've ever seen in my life. Here's a high-paying deal. Like, this doesn't make any sense on the direction of a franchise based on what you just said. Now, understand this. This isn't me coming after Myles Garrett. He's probably the best pass rusher in the NFL. Let's just say here's what happened instead. Myles Garrett said, I will not play for the Cleveland Browns. Two first-round draft picks are traded, and he goes to the Buffalo Bills and gets that same exact extension from the Bills. Standing ovation from me sitting here going like, unbelievable move for the Browns, unbelievably good move for the Buffalo Bills. Because why? The Bills think they can win a championship, and he's the missing piece. Now, understand this. The Cleveland Browns, you are going absolutely nowhere until Deshaun Watson's contract is completely clear. And in the NFL, once you start to hit 30 years old, you are no longer in your prime as an NFL player outside of the quarterback position. That's just a fact. Can he be a serviceable player in 2 to 3 years? Absolutely. Might he be the best player in football once again next year? Cleveland, you're not making the playoffs next year. And here's where you contrast that with the Seattle Seahawks. They won 10 games last year, and their ownership group said, you know what? I don't think we can win a championship with this team. Isn't that what it's about? Like, signing Myles Garrett to quarterback money to win you 5 games a season? Like, what is the point of that? You are best off just saying, until Watson's contract is completely clear, let's tear this thing down. Let's get multiple first rounders. And maybe the next 2 to 3 years, we'll get Arch Manning as our quarterback. We'll rebuild this thing, and we'll be a proud franchise for our Cleveland fans. I'm sure Cleveland fans that have Myles Garrett jerseys and love Myles Garrett, and there's a lot of them out there that do. But understand this. You didn't help your football team by signing the best overall defensive end. Why? Because you're not winning anything. Isn't that the point of professional sports? You're either building to win something, or you're going backwards to make sure in a few years you can then build to win something here. One of the worst contract signings I've ever seen for a single sports franchise is Myles Garrett. And it's not Myles Garrett's fault.
And Donnie, they've been giving out some very peculiar contracts as of late. There is no doubt about Myles Garrett's talent. He was the first overall pick by the Browns back in 2017. His career resume is astounding. In 8 years in the NFL, all with the Browns, he has been a 6-time All-Pro, a 6-time Pro Bowler. 4 of the last 5 years, he has been an AP All-Pro first-team performer and the Defensive Player of the Year, now just 2 seasons ago. But Myles Garrett is not going to be the piece to win you a championship. Myles Garrett was fully healthy in 2024, and Cleveland won 3 games because of the disaster the quarterback position was and remains a disaster right now under Kevin Stefanski. You would certainly think, DRS, the Browns holding the 2nd overall selection are saying to themselves right here, right now, we got to make a splash. We got to move up to get Cam Ward. We have to make sure we can be in play. Because if they don't believe Shedeur Sanders is QB number 2, that is worthy of that 2nd overall selection, they have to go get a quarterback to try to capitalize on this window. Otherwise, they're just paying people to play, not paying people to win.
Exactly, and you hit the nail on the head. Let's just say you traded him 2 first-round picks, and let's just say you didn't get Cam Ward and it was Shedeur Sanders. But you said, you know what? This guy's going to be our future. And then the next 2 years, you added weapons for Shedeur Sanders, rebuilt that football team, and in 2 to 3 years, you are now true contenders in the AFC. That's the game plan that fans can buy into. They can't buy into spending money and saying, boy, by the time we get good, oh my goodness, Myles is making $50 million a year. This is ridiculous. Why did we do that? Just reset the program, get your future quarterback, and away you go. And fans will always buy into that.
Plenty of other moves from the NFL weekend. We've got a lot of signings and a lot of maneuvers to recap for you We do it next here on the Early Line. So much news this weekend around the National Football League. A reminder, the legal tampering window, that negotiating period before the official start of the league year, begins today, noon Eastern time. Plenty more deals will be had. You will see so many reports, so many agreed to the terms of a contract. The league year officially begins 4 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday. That's when the dotted line can officially be signed around the NFL. That will be the case for the Los Angeles Rams. Actually, the deal already done because Davante Adams was released by the New York Jets. Davante Adams in a new spot with Matthew Stafford in Los Angeles. A 2-year, $46 million deal. Donnie, we talked about Davante being released by the New York Jets. Frankly, he was only there on a loan to play with his buddy and former quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. And despite the fact, of course, it did not work out for the Jets in large part this past season, Davante Adams still performing at a very high level. Davante Adams, 5 consecutive years, despite the drama he has really played a large part in, of 1,000 receiving yards at bare minimum. Davante Adams still producing. I think he was the top wide receiver on the free agent market, and now adds a huge piece to a Rams team that, after a peculiar start to the offseason, has Matthew Stafford re-signed, has Davante Adams now in-house, a Rams team ready to win once again.
And I love the way you phrase that as like a big piece to that offense. He doesn't have to come in and be the savior. Like, oh, we've been dying for a number one wide receiver for 8 years. We finally got one, even though he is an aging veteran on the back end of his prime. Puka Nacua is still going to be the number one, which means, oh, you want to double cover Nacua? Adam's going to slay you on the backside. You want to roll coverage one side, the other guy's going to get after you here. It'll be interesting to see how they put those two in motion. But again, you have one of the best play callers in NFL history in Sean McVay pulling the strings. I absolutely love that. And understand this about the Rams, too. Adding that free agent and saying, you know what? I think this guy puts us over the top. Dare I say, if Jalen Carter doesn't rumble in for a key third down sack for the Philadelphia Eagles in the snow in the divisional round, Rams win that football game. Rams would beat Washington at home in the next round. And how did you beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl? Have a devastating pass rush. I think the Rams had like 8 sacks from the Philadelphia Eagles and lost that football game. They might have been world champions. So now you say, let's keep the band in town. Let's keep Stafford happy. And you know what else you make him happy? You're going to pay him more money. Get him another weapon on the outside here. I love what the Rams did. And again, this is an organization that says we're in our window. Kept our quarterback. Let's add on. Let's see if we can go out and win another world championship, which they did just a few years ago. I don't think anybody out there saw Davante Adams going to the Rams like, why did they do that for? Great decision, great signing, and I'm looking forward to taking a look to see what the Rams do in 2025.
Which is always, Donnie, what made that speculation and seemingly a rumor mill that then had some legs to it around Matthew Stafford's status in L.A. all that much more peculiar. The Rams had everything in place to be a legitimate and bona fide Super Bowl contender once again in 2025 in the tail end of Stafford's career. Whatever that drama was, it is now done. And maybe you think of Davante Adams kind of as that drama-filled wideout as well. End of 2021, even with Aaron Rodgers still at Lambeau, he's like, you know what? I'd rather go play with my college quarterback and buddy Derek Carr in Las Vegas. Forces his way to Vegas. Still has a great year with Derek Carr. Even after Carr leaves in 2023, still over 1,000 receiving yards. And Donnie only played in 14 total games this year, 11 with the New York Jets, still over 1,000 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. And it's not like he goes somewhere where the quarterback situation is not solved. Matthew Stafford, still one of the great slingers of the football in 2025. All right, let's talk about some other big signings this weekend. Ronnie Stanley was about to test the open market for free agency, but goes back to the Ravens on a 3-year, $60 million deal. Some injuries kind of plaguing Ronnie Stanley's time, but fully healthy this year, DRS, a Pro Bowl at the left tackle spot. Huge for Lamar Jackson and the flock to keep Stanley in the Charm City.
Yeah, you didn't want him going out there on the open market and say, test the waters and come back to us, because that number would have got inflated here. It was surprising it took this long because good left tackles are very hard to come by, particularly on the free agent market. Good signing for them. Keep that identity there. Powerful ground game, physical offensive line. If Ronnie Stanley stays healthy, one of the better left tackles, no issues with that signing. It had to happen for the Ravens.
And smart to get it done over the weekend before the start of the legal tampering window, although I'm sure maybe some calls were made already. A couple of linebackers signing for nearly $15 million a year. The Chiefs re-sign their middle linebacker in Nick Bolton, keeping him in-house. Harold Landry III, after many years in Tennessee, reunites with his former head coach in Mike Vrabel. Landry was released earlier in the week, signs a 3-year, $43.5 million deal. The Patriots have a lot of money to spend. They're doing so in Foxborough.
Exactly, and you're spending on pass rush here can never fault them. They just need talent in New England. That adds talent and a familiar face, but also take a look at Nick Bolton, one of the more versatile linebackers in professional football.
Yeah.
Guy looks like he's roaming around as a safety, makes a lot of big plays. That was a deserving contract as well.
Trey Smith, placed under the franchise tag by KC, has signed the tender, but still has until the middle of July 15th, to be exact, to agree on a long-term extension with KC. There is still optimism that deal gets done. Aaron Jones, after a sensational year, his first out of Green Bay, but still in the NFC North with Minnesota, re-signs with the Vikings on a 2-year, $20 million deal. Know that price, about $10 million annually. Donnie, last year the going rate for running backs was about $8 million per year annually. So the running back position, valuable once more.
Yep, good move here. You need a solid – look, if you're going to have the rookie quarterback / second-year guy in J.J. McCarthy, protect him with a good running game, and Jones can certainly do that. There is some upside in Minnesota. We'll see where they go with the quarterback position, but all signs right now trending towards J.J. McCarthy taking over the helm in September, which is the right thing to do for the franchise.
And hopefully keeping Daniel Jones as his reserve and veteran experience. Sam Darnold remains that big name. Around noon Eastern today, where does he go at the quarterback spot after trading Geno Smith? A lot of speculation. Seattle could be the front runner. A couple of moves out of Buffalo, releasing Von Miller, the veteran, as was expected based on his salary, extending Gregory Rousseau, a talented young edge rusher. So the Bills paying Josh Allen, Rousseau, Terrell Bernard, as we said, and Khalil Shakir. Derek Carr restructuring his deal slightly. He remains the starting quarterback in New Orleans for the Kellen Moore era. Plenty more comes your way next on TEL. Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. As we spent most of our opening hour detailing, it is a very important week around the National Football League. We saw a flurry of moves this weekend. All of the moves officially done before the official start of the league year. That's 4 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, when the trades can officially go through, when players can sign that contract on the dotted line. But today, important as the unofficial official start of free agency. Noon Eastern time, that legal tampering period, the negotiating window, when clubs and players and representation can agree to terms on new deals, that officially begins. We could be seeing things happen right now, but Twitter being down at this moment. I don't know if Adam Schefter has TikTok, but he might want to get to it as quickly as possible. DRS will provide those free agency trackers throughout the next few days here, of course, early in the NFL offseason. But free agency, we think, is going to be a frenzy, although we have already seen a ton of big news in the last few days or so. Of course, maybe the biggest name to monitor, and it might sound tongue-in-cheek to call him the biggest name in the market, but truly he is. Sam Darnold. Where does the quarterback end up in 2025? With the Seahawks trading away Geno Smith, there is already some speculation that would be a natural landing spot. So the question is where, and then maybe how much. In terms of how much money per year does Sam Darnold garner at the quarterback spot? What will that tell us about the inflated salaries at the quarterback position?
It is going to be interesting where he does go, but I think we're figuring right now it's probably going to be Seattle. The other landing spot you'd figure would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not much smoke coming out, but we know that could change where if you are an agent, and let's just say Sam Darnold is settled in Seattle, and you're not getting exactly what you want, you pick up the phones, you use some of these beat writers. Hey, Steelers now checking in. Carolina now checking in. Miami now checking in to create that bidding market out here for a certain said player. But for me, I think Sam Darnold's going to get a pretty penny because understand this. We keep saying, did you see the contracts that were given out yesterday by basically free agent football players? Imagine if you get the free agency, and as you just said, you're getting a bidding war. Like, again, you just start with the quarterback. Teams always need a quarterback. As long as you have two people interested, there's no limit to what that number could be. So I'm interested to see how quickly Sam Darnold signs. I don't think, to be honest, let's put it like odds on this. Sam Darnold's going to sign today, right? He doesn't even make it like into tomorrow, I would feel.
I think so. Don't forget, last year, the biggest move of the offseason was another quarterback leaving Minnesota. That was Kirk Cousins. He signed that four-year, $180 million deal with Atlanta almost as soon as that negotiating window opened up. Donnie, we call it the legal tampering period. Like there hasn't been phone calls and conversations happening the last few weeks and certainly the last few days for Sam Darnold and his representation with various other spots around the National Football League. We like to play front office exec here on the early line, and I think that is going to be a part of the question. How much and what is the length of the contract for Sam Darnold? If you are a GM, if you are John Schneider in Seattle, Donnie, what seems to be fair market value? What would you be willing to spend to make Sam Darnold your starting quarterback?
I mean, just saw a guy sign for, an average value of $55 million, but got all that guaranteed money. If he is hitting the open market, are we going to be surprised? Like, well, first of all, let's credit by this. Seattle Seahawks didn't want to pay Geno Smith, let's just say $35 million. We'll call it $30 million, just give it a round number at this point. Darnold's going to get more than that. So he's probably going to get 35 plus. And what's a good, because we have such an interesting dichotomy on like when Brock Purdy signs. The reason I'm bringing up other quarterbacks just to try to frame this. Like the one that throws everything out is the Baker Mayfield deal to Tampa Bay, where I go, wait, I get a Pro Bowl quarterback for about $30 million a year. Like, why am I signing you to $45 million? I'd rather have Baker Mayfield. Now, granted, that now happened a few off seasons ago and sort of negates what you're getting this year. But I put it this way, surprising to me if Darnold doesn't clock in at $35+ million per year at his age. If I put a round number on that, I'd go $40 million for Darnold. That's crazy. No, that's what a starting makes, particularly on the free agent market.
Baker signed a 3-year, $100 million deal, $33 million per year AAV last offseason because he proved it in Tampa. And then they were still like, all right, but can you continue to prove it and raise our ceiling? You would say that Baker Mayfield has done that. If Mayfield were to hit the open market again, that number would no longer be 33 mil, but you kind of feel as though that's the same philosophy for Sammy D. You are a veteran presence. You can provide a stable floor. Are you going to elevate our ceiling to be a playoff contender if we're expected to win 7 to 8 games? If we're even more than that, the Pittsburgh Steelers, a perennial playoff team, can you make us a true conference contender? That's the conversation, I think, around Sam Darnold. Speaking of Baker Mayfield's teammate in Tampa, after 8 years with the Buccaneers, Chris Godwin set to become a free agent. And, of course, another significant knee injury this past year in 2024. But after Davante Adams signs and T. Higgins under the tag, not a lot of wide receiver love in the market right now. Certainly some for defensive linemen. Khalil Mack, a lot of conversation. He might return to Chicago to end out his playing days with the Bears. And, Donnie, two guys for your birds, Milton Williams and Josh Sweat up front. Of course, Sweat, a monumental performance in Super Bowl 59. But the question is, can Howie Roseman keep getting away with it? Can he keep being financially savvy to find the money to pay everybody? I think that's the question for both of those D linemen in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and I doubt either one of those will be back in Philadelphia, which is why they actually got the free agency. You saw the Philadelphia Eagles understand the game that was being played. Don't let the guys you want get the free agency. Zach Baldwin was tied up immediately right away and said, okay, let's file that away. Now, also, you can look at running back position there where Saquon Barkley got the big deal, but he wasn't a free agent. If we look at that list again, like Sam Darnold's probably going to get the most overall money, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually Milton Williams, the defensive tackle for the Eagles, that really rings the cash register. A young defensive tackle that can get pressure on the quarterback by himself and stop the run. That's a price point there. Put it this way. That's why he's not back with the Eagles. He's actually too expensive. If they wanted to bring back Josh Sweat, they could probably get something done at a decent deal, but maybe they want to spend their money and allocate it differently. The Milton Williams one is the one that the Eagles go, boy, we'd love to have you. We actually can't even afford you at this point.
Another great draft by Howie Roseman. Third-round pick, Milton Williams, now 4 years ago in 2021 out of Louisiana Tech. So he's coming up for that second contract in the NFL after the discounted rookie deal. The Eagles just might not have enough chips to keep him back in Philly. Of course, any free agency news that we get in the next 40 minutes will bring you, and I'm sure we will have a ton to recap tomorrow morning as well. Let's talk some NBA action on this Monday next.